Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to a master class on reality creation through the Dyad. This is a class I'll be going through, and I'm Terry Stengel, joining you from Connecticut, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, John Worthington, who is joining us from Mexico. Hi, John. And John created this class a few years ago, and I took the class a couple of times and have had some interest in learning how to present it. So I've asked John to join me here as part of the series on forging, the business of forging agreement. So over the next few sessions, we're going to be kind of walking through the class. And I'm going to be asking kind of John how he thinks about this and some of the questions I have in presenting it and applying it. And but I also want to encourage any of you watching. The process of watching this is really different than actually being engaged in taking the class and applying this in real time.
Well, that's what you think.
I certainly found that, it's very different than reading and doing. So this might tease your interest, but if you're interested, we actually do this class on a regular basis. So, but let's start today first about why this class was created at all, because it was one of the later classes I took with you, John, and so I'd be curious if you could just start talking about what your thinking was and why you created the class, and then maybe I can share kind of how I found it beneficial. This is a kind of framework for this whole thing.
Okay. Well, the reason why it was created was because there are couples, and the programming between couples is different than the programming for an individual. The rules are just a little bit different. In terms of a couple program. And so we kind of ran into every now and then where people were married or they were hanging out together a lot, and their programming, well, they adjust their programming individually, but that didn't necessarily bring them together in terms of what it was that they wanted to accomplish in their collective life. And so as that became more and more obvious, we decided that, well, let's see if we can't put together something that is more geared toward a couple. And then we realized that as it wasn't just as a couple, it was any relationship, any dyadic relationship, which is essentially how any agreement is forged. It's forged between two people. Whether they're married or whether they're dating or whether it's a boss and an employee, or whether it's the taxi driver and you get into the airport. I mean, it's all those things are forged through an agreement between two people. Now the other people can be involved, most assuredly, but when other people are involved, then it's still the two people. It's still the other person and the person seeking the agreement, or the third person or fourth person and fifth person seeking, and that person seeking the agreement, and so forth. It's always that way. So we thought that if we just thought about it in terms of a dyad, it was simpler for people to understand it. And so we put together a group of a series of thoughts and borrowed heavily from people who've also thought about a relationship in that form, at being creative.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I took this class a couple different times. I took it, when I was, trying to figure out what to do with a first marriage, which actually, ended up after many years not working. And it gave me a way to look at some of what was happening there. And I took it again with the man who, first time I didn't take it with my ex-husband. I guess that says something right there. But the second time I took it with the man that I eventually married, and and I have found that it gives me some ways to look at the things that go on between us or don't go on that I didn't have before. And
okay.
So I that's one of the reasons I wanted to learn more about, okay, how can I share this information? Because I think it's really useful and it helps deal with a lot of common situations in a couple places.
Okay.
So, well, in the first session of this class, you normally would go through some of the principles or concepts that you also cover in our introductory class, which right now I know you're doing a whole standalone class on that with Lenore.
Yep.
And anybody who wants to go in more detail might want to look to that session. But those concepts are also important.
I don't know that there's any. Yes, they are. You want to start with the beginning of that, or you have questions about that, or what? Because you're the way that you're speaking about it, like you're not going to cover that, or what? Explain to me, kid. I got lost with where you're going here.
I was just giving a cross reference, and we do need to talk about it because all that stuff is really important.
Okay.
I think. You know,
I see.
And
because it applies differently to a dyad than it does to a single individual.
Okay. Well, then let's go through that as we cover these about what the difference might be.
Okay, where would you like to start, he queries?
Well, the usual place we start is with blame. And,
okay, you want to start from there? All right.
Blame's a good thing to eliminate.
Well, in a couple, okay, with a couple, whether it's a boss and an employee, or a man and a wife, or a boyfriend and girlfriend, whatever, one of the things that really do, shall we say, really gives reason to why they argue or fight or don't get along, is because one blames the other for what they're doing. Okay, for instance, I've heard tell that certain feminine varieties of people have a tendency to say to masculine variety of people, you know, it's your fault that I'm not happy, for instance, or you're being oppressive to me because it's your fault that I feel oppressed. Okay, and it's typical. The typical response from a male type of individual would be, well, you ought to be in my shoes where it is that you won't ever give me agreement over what I want to do. And so we really would like to take that whole scenario and kind of put it in that round file, okay? Because that's all BS. You can't, if you feel something, I don't care whether you're a guy or a girl, if you feel something, it ain't anybody else's fault. You feel that because that's what you feel. And the reason why you feel, we'll get into this further, I think, but the reason why you feel that is because of what else is in your thinking about that thing. Because feeling is not the primary reaction. It's quite secondary or maybe even tertiary. It's not anywhere close to the actual idea. It's a symptom. It is not the malady. And so we can treat the symptom. We can say, we can tell you that that's the problem, but the reality is that we just got to treat the symptom so you can pay attention to what the actual problem is. So what we try to do with that is we try to say, okay, look, you don't blame anybody else. If you did it, accept it. You did it. And if you feel something, it's something that you did. You feeling that, not the other person, but you. Okay, in other words, when you and Moshe fight, it's not, and you say that you feel oppressed, or you feel that he's not paying attention, or he's, whatever you feel about. It's not his fault. It's you that's put that feeling in place, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's yours.
I'm reacting because of what's in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. The reaction is there because of what you do. And if somebody else might listen to that same thing, they don't feel anything at all about it. They may laugh about it even. But you say, "Oh, I've been offended. I've been threatened. The world is coming to an end." Other things like that. So, in a couple, we want to really emphasize that because you're blaming the other person for what it is that you're feeling is kind of a silly thing, and it doesn't solve the problem. What it does is it makes the problem stay there forever and ever and ever. And so consequently, you have couples arguing about the same set of things for years. What a good time. Ooh. See, that's the reason.
So there may be a way to talk about the behavior without getting caught up in how I'm reacting.
Well, it isn't even about talking about the behavior. You know, you knew the behavior was there when you married the dude. What are you bitching about? You know, that thing about for better or worse, you know, that's the worst part. You know, the better part's when he fixes it, okay? Or even better yet is when you fix it. It isn't his fault that you feel that way, and so you're still hanging on to, you know, right now. I just went through this whole thing, said you know, if don't blame him, and you said, well, when he gets it fixed, then it'll be better. No, it won't. It won't be better until you fix it. It's in you, kid. You eat up with it. You're blaming the other guy for what it is you're doing. Okay, so
yeah, that
it's
totally
pretty common.
You know,
it's kind of like common as dirt. You know, it's something everybody, you know, it washes off the same way.
Well, the related concept then is to what you were just talking about is responsible. And you kind of segued into that saying, I'm responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for what I do.
Yes.
And so where I can fix it is in the part where I'm responsible for, which are all that, my behavior, my reaction.
You know, okay, look, here's the thing. I mean, think about this. I step on a nail, or I get a splinter in my thumb. Okay, I get a splinter in there, and I say, "Why did you do that? I got a splinter in my thumb because you did that. Why'd you do that to me? I got a splinter in my thumb." Will that really that really get the splinter out of my thumb? Not at all, right?
No.
No. I'll have to stop and say, oh, that's my thumb, and that's splinter in my thumb. I'll have to figure that out. See? Well, that's what we're talking about here. It's yours. It isn't somebody else's. It's kind of like going to the bathroom, right? You know, I can't do that for you. That's how you respond to feeling too full of water or whatever. And so that comes out into that translates over to anything else that you respond with. So if your response is to feel a certain way, that's your response. There isn't some cosmic make you feel thing taking place in the universe. That's something you're doing to yourself. You've decided to feel that way. And you feel that way because you see a threat, or you think that you should react that way, or because that's your rules, whatever those things are. And in a dyad or in a couple, in any kind of relationship of that one-on-one relationship, that's lethal because you never fix the problem. You only blame the other person for the problem that actually belongs to you. Yeah, I don't know why my boss is always. I mean, he's like a wet diaper. He's full of shit on my ass all the time. Well, maybe you ought to adjust some of your behaviors here to find out what he's on your butt about, huh? Yeah, but he's full of shit. He's always telling me shit to do, and he doesn't understand what I'm trying to accomplish. No, he doesn't understand what you're trying to accomplish. Do you? Do you know really what he's trying to accomplish? Have you thought about where he's going with it? I mean, you're working with the guy, so why are you complaining about what's there, actually? That doesn't make good sense. Okay.
Yeah, I know for me, a lot of it was going from, why is he being so picky about this, to beginning to change, like, oh, this is what, you know, what Moshe is trying to accomplish, or this is why it's important to him.
He actually had a reason for wanting you to address those issues. In other words,
yeah.
So see, that's the whole thing, I think, isn't it? I mean, you want him to address issues that you see that he can't, and he wants you to address issues that he sees that you can't.
So,
gee, that sounds like a pretty good trade-off to me. But if you're going to argue about
yeah,
it
we
because
both
he's
gain.
asked you to do something,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
well, but okay, all right, go ahead.
Alrighty, so let's kind of go on to the next thing. This is another good one. Eliminating dichotomies is a sort of a ground rule here.
Oh, God knows we can eliminate the dichotomies, okay? Especially the rights and wrongs, okay? And whatever it doesn't actually accomplish that. Let me say that properly. And whatever doesn't do anything at all. Okay, it just
it doesn't resolve it.
No, it doesn't. Okay. What it does is it puts it off until tomorrow. And so, what are you going to create between now and then?
Well, and yeah, along with the rights and the wrongs, or it's like, who's winning, losing, is what you're doing good or bad, all of that stuff. It tend to promote arguments rather than, any kind of.
No, they don't promote arguments. They are arguments. Okay, if I'm right, you're obviously wrong. Okay, and if we can get out past the right doing and the wrong doing, then there's a place out there beyond that where we can talk about whatever it is that's actually going on. And if we can do that without too awful much Arvis, I think that everybody benefits.
And so
that's just a personal opinion. So you might want to try that, though.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, in teaching when you're teaching the class, these things that you're doing are to help people get out to that green field so they can have a different conversation with each other.
Well, look, they can do that anytime at all that they quit blaming each other for how they feel. There isn't any steps to it. It's just that you give that up. You put it down. You submit to reality rather than say, I'm more important than you are. That doesn't really work very well. Whether it's from his part or from your part, it's the same thing, really. And so what ends up happening as you begin to examine these things is that the inevitability of the logic has to take over. And in a couple, they can talk back and forth with each other about those things. That's the reason why we want to bring them up for them in this introduction, so that they understand that they want to really work on that particular issue in particular. And to aid that, we say, okay, let's take away the dichotomies. Let's take away the equal opposites. Let's take away the I'm right, you're wrong, I'm good, you're bad. Your mother, your brother was here, or even your friends came by. Or where were you, darling? With your friends? Oh my goodness, what a good time that's going to be tonight, huh? See, for couples like that, they don't need a house. What they need is they need to put a sign out in front of their house that says storage locker, frozen meat held here forever. Because everybody's going to get a cold shoulder for a while here over that particular statement. So why do that stuff? It doesn't make good sense. Why bother? You with or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we want to take the dichotomy out of it, because that dichotomy is something that is inevitably going to be an argument. Well, I know I'm right. Which way does the toilet paper go? Well, it's more convenient if the paper goes on the top. Okay, if it goes on the bottom, you can't find it. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the person who's doing that is terrible. It means that they're ignorant. Now, if you know better and you don't share your knowledge with that other person, then shame on you. If you don't take the time to go in there and say, look, let me show you. You put it on the top and it pulls off easy. You put it on the bottom, you're fishing for it. Now, don't do that. If you squeeze from the end, you get all the toothpaste out of it. You squeeze in the middle, there's a bunch of it on the end, a bunch of it on the other end, and you can't get any out of it anyway because there's no pressure to push it out. Just why do that? Let's do it from the end. If both of you want to squeeze it from the middle, okay, cool. It's your toothbrush, your toothpaste. You with it as you damn well please. I don't care. But if it's an issue, then educate each other about how to do that, rather than going into this dichotometric thing of you're wrong about that. You put the toilet paper on wrong. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like these things fit together because I know when I moved a little to the wanting to be or being educated, I also had to deal with I'm feeling like I'm being told what to do. And that was in me. So I had to put that on the shelf to say, well, let me really understand this different perspective, rather than
you see that. So
that's kind of an early teenage girl reaction. You can't tell me how to dress.
Can you stop for a second? Yo, Terry, stop for a freaking second. How about it, huh? See, that's the problem with you. You didn't pay attention to what I told you the first time. I don't care how you feel about it.
Exactly.
No, you didn't. You didn't. You misunderstood it. You didn't pay attention to it. You didn't actually say, yes, okay, I agree. What you said is, okay, I'm not, I'm right. I was told what to do. I feel as though you're telling me what to do.
Right. I was giving that as an example of an error that I made. Terry, can you take a deep breath here, please? Thank you. Just chill for a second. It won't hurt anything at all. I love you just the same. I'm not mad at you, nothing like that. But getting your attention is difficult. And see, this is one of the problems within a couple, okay, with a dyad. Because one person says, and their dichotometric form, I want you to do this thing, please. It rather than explaining it, rather than stopping you and saying, look, I've got to explain this so that you can understand it. What they do is that they argue about it, about who's right and who's wrong. It's like right now you just made an excuse for why it was that you were saying that thing over again, even though I have already acknowledged that you were saying it, which I did. And even though I not only have I acknowledged that you're saying it, but I've also said to you, okay, Terry, how you feel is not something that we can rely on. You're responsible for that feeling, not me. So I'm not telling you what to do nearly as much as I'm trying to get your attention so that we can discuss what it is that's going on here. Can we do that? Sure.
Okay, what do you think's going on? Am I telling you what to do, sweetness?
No, you're bringing to my attention something that I just did, so I could pay attention to it.
What a nasty guy I am. I'm bringing this to your attention. You know what? I had to create more intensity than what you have in order to say that. So is that intensity wrong?
It was what was required at the moment.
No, darling. You're not paying attention at all here, are you? You just whitewashed the whole thing. Let's go again. Was the intensity wrong? Let me put it differently. Was the intensity rude?
No, I don't think it was. It stopped me.
Yes, you do. Yes, Terry, you do think that kind of intensity is rude. You don't like me to do that with you, right? Because it's embarrassing, kind of, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought we'd agreed that dichotomies were something we didn't want to deal with. Rude and unrude, they're not dichotomies? Polite and rude? So you can use polite and rude as a way of discounting what it is I'm trying to say to you. And so that fight goes on forever and a day, right?
As long as I'm using that, yeah, it does.
Oh, what a good time! Can I sign up for this place where we can have this wonderful exchange of hate each other in a passive aggressive methodology forever? Ooh, that sounds like fun. You see, this is a class about how it is that you don't do that. And if you want to learn how to do it, then you can't do it yourself. And there's a period behind that. It means you have to be done with it yourself. I can't argue with you about this. I have to either do one of two things. I have to either explain it to you so you can understand it, or I have to agree with you to do it forever. Now, it doesn't serve you, so why should I? And you're wanting to learn how to do the class, and so you're going to teach people to do what you're doing right here. Now, how does that work? To me, that doesn't make sense.
I don't like that one. Okay.
But yet that's what you're currently doing. Isn't that a good time?
Not so much.
Gee, your old man Moshe, he's a lucky fucker, and he gets to put up with this 24/7, 365. What a good time.
All right. I think I should just kind of sit down here and pay attention.
No.
I kind of just had it handed to me. I deserved it. I got it. Okay.
It's not a deserve. It's not a got. It's none of those kinds of things. It's to talk to you requires an intensity level that you don't acknowledge. When somebody else does it to you, you don't like it at all, but you don't notice that you do it. You don't notice how intense you are about what you think is real. Nobody ever does. So you're not a bad girl. But if you're gonna deal with couples, you got to understand that these kinds of things are very intense between them because of this dichotomy that they'll nod their head and say, "Oh yes, that's right. Salt and pepper are different. They're merely condiments. They're not equal opposites. Oh, night and day are not really the opposite. One has light, one doesn't. That's all the difference there is. It's the same world going round and around." But when you get right down to, "Oh, but he used that tone of voice on me. Hellcat, do you hear how he's talking to me?" How intense is that?
Pretty dang intense.
There you go. Okay, so is he right or wrong? Neither one. Is she right or wrong? Neither one. Shut up, please. It's not about right and wrong. It's about whether or not you guys can get along for a minute or two. And what you're doing here is guaranteeing no getting along. Oh, see, that's why we often say, did you get a license to get married? And then you have a license to fight. It's okay. Cool. Go ahead. You guys go at it. Because you're going to fight about silly things like toilet paper and who's giving the orders. You don't know anything about sailing, but when you go sailing, you're pissed off because he says, "Here, do this right now, right this part." Oh my. So, see, this dichotomy thing is a pretty important concept, I think. That's just my opinion, okay? But I think it's really an important idea because I think that if you really examine how many dichotomies we have in our lives, such as rude and polite, not just good and bad and right and wrong, but tone of voice that's proper and tone of voice that isn't. Kindness as opposed to cruelty. Who defines those? Well, I do. Really? Okay, define it. You can sign the divorce papers here tomorrow if you like. I'll have them drawn up for you, so that's where you're going to go. It's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. Get rid of the damn dichotomies, please. Please. I'm not ordering you or anything. I'm just suggesting strongly that, doing without the dichotomies is probably going to be really useful and worthwhile. If you want to make it a federal case, well, okay, it's your right.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, all right, here we go. We're going to work ahead on the next step and without the dichotomies.
Good. Let's see if that's actually true.
Yeah, let's see that. Be refreshing,
okay,
right?
Go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, this next one,
look, it's hard to do, right? I mean, don't misunderstand. It's hard to do.
Yeah,
it is.
It requires time. Long-standing habit. So yeah, at times it is absolutely, and sometimes I know for me, I'm not always aware that shoot, there it is, another. So
you can't see what you're looking with, kid.
Okay, yeah, that's why it's nice to have another person around to help show.
You do. His name is Moshe.
Yeah, I do, exactly. In fact, that's who I was thinking about. You're here, but I was thinking like, oh, I got that 24/7.
There you go. Okay,
all right. So earlier you were talking about how this is all really good to do so we could start dealing with reality rather than
right.
Which gets to the next one about that balance between our own inner reality and what's actually going on. And
well, there has to be a balance between internal and external reality, okay? And your significant other is a defined part of external reality. No matter if you do treat them as though they are an internal reality. That may also be true, but they are a defined part of external reality, and that's the thing you have to determine and you have to consider. And as a defined part of external reality, they have the right and maybe even an obligation to, shall we say, follow external reality rulings, or examples, for instance. It's not a rule, but it is kind of, okay? External reality operates by a different set of rules than internal reality. That's true. And so when you're talking to Moshe, you often talk to him as though he's actually internal reality. When he talks to you as though quite often as though your internal reality, that you should understand his internal reality.
You should understand
there's no law about that anywhere at all. Yeah. But there's no rule about that at all. Okay, that doesn't exist. You'll never be able to see how he sees it. You can anticipate certain things that he does because you know him. He can anticipate certain things that you do because he knows you. But to see how you think about it is damnably difficult. So for you to expect that to be the case because you have some internal fantasy reality about, oh, the love of my life will understand who and what I am and how I think and how I behave, and it'll be all buttercups and roses. And the bluebird of happiness will sing forever along with the unicorn.
I won't ever have to say what I want. It will just come to me.
Right. Well, see, that's not a balance between internal and external reality.
Right. That there's a whole formed human being out there with their own thoughts and experiences, and it's
not out there. It's just right there on the other side of your nose. That's where that is. Okay, it's right there in front of you all of the damn time. Okay, and so if the deal is that you loved him and you wanted to be with him and so forth, well, now you love him and now you're being with him. So what are you complaining about that he doesn't understand who you are? How can he? You keep that hidden, don't you? Just as he does. Because you see, that's the scariest thing that can happen in a relationship, is that you share your innermost thoughts and feelings, because those can be used against you. You think, we all think that. We think, we even have a word for it. We call it vulnerable. If I tell you my innermost thoughts, I will be vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Are you attacking me? That's what. No, you'll be vulnerable for what it is that you can accomplish.
Okay, can you add a few
Are
more
you
words to that
accomplishing,
one?
or? Oh, maybe. Are you trying to
Well,
accomplish something, or are you trying to make? Are you trying to accomplish something, or are you trying to make your point?
often I'm trying to make my point.
Well, whatever.
All right, so I see. So you can, when you say you can be vulnerable to trying to accomplish something, or to actually accomplishing something by putting out what's really there, you're dealing with something that's more nearly real.
And this is always a good. This is, and so here's the thing. Let's say that you want to accomplish something, and so you say to Moshe, look, what I really want to do is this thing. Go to the grocery store. We just call it go to the grocery store. That covers all of it. Okay, all the goodies.
Okay.
And he says he says, which grocery store do you want to go to? And you say, well, there is no Safeway, so I want to go to Kruger's. And he says, Kruger's? Why would you want to go to Kruger's? What kind of a person goes to Kruger's? See, that's what you're afraid of, right? Because that feels like an attack.
Feels like
It feels like the external reality is now attacking you. Well, what if we looked at it a little bit differently? What if we looked at it as saying, okay, that's an opportunity for you to expand his horizons? What if you could say, well, there are other stores besides Cracker Barrel. That's not the only place in the world. Costco is a wonderful place to buy boxes full of stuff, and even some of the wine's great, but it doesn't really have the kind of cheddar cheese I'm looking for. And so I really want you to enjoy this cheddar cheese that I can get over there at Kruger's. I can't get at Costco, for instance. Okay. Because why? Because you care about that external reality person. And no matter what they say, you're still going to trust them and say, okay, look, I'm going to do this for you because I want you to enjoy this the same as I do. And I know that you enjoy you will, because I've seen what you've tasted before and what you liked, and I'm pretty sure you're going to like this one. But I need you to try it, and the only way I can do that is for you to go get it so you can try it.
So that's about trying to accomplish something.
So you're going to be vulnerable to accomplish that thing for the other person. Oops. That's fun.
It's a different way of looking at it. Yeah. Maybe it's the real way, but
it isn't a different way. It's the way it actually is, kid, whether you like it or not. I mean, that you don't look at it that way is different, I guess, but it doesn't mean that that's not how it is, really. Okay?
All right.
Okay. So that's the reason why we want couples in particular to look at this internal and external reality balance, because that other person is balancing you in the external reality. If from an observer standpoint, there's two entities that are in balance because they figure out how to resolve these vulnerable issues or vulnerability issues.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because of
there's that constant.
because of what they want to accomplish. not because they want to prove that their point. What a silly herd of cows they are. They both want to try to prove their point. Gracious sakes! Up there in northeastern Pennsylvania is something that would elicit a "God love you, hun" kind of response. Okay.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because that in the back and forth, you got the two minds kind of exchanging. And
the very idea that makes sense. Why on earth would we be talking about something that makes sense?
Okay, all right. So it's obvious.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just taking my mental highlighter and underscoring it. But, yeah.
See, in a relationship, I don't really care. That's what you're doing. It's kind of interesting that you're doing it and so forth, but I already trust you, so who cares? You don't need to excuse that to me. When you excuse that to me, you're telling me that there's a distance between us that I don't believe exists. Why do you need to excuse what you're doing?
Imagine that.
You're just having a hell of a time with these questions, girl. That's all I can tell you. Okay.
Well, I can say it's a really good thing we're talking about this before I try to launch into more.
Okay.
All right.
What else you got on your plate over there?
Well, now we're getting into the fun part where fantasy is not welcome.
Well, in any relationship, a certain amount of fantasy is not only welcome but necessary, perhaps. But we're not talking about that kind of fantasy. What we're talking about, the fantasy that we're talking about here, really is the fantasy of saying who you think that other person should be. This is going to come as a surprise, perhaps, but there really is not, nor has there ever been, a Prince Charming. It just doesn't exist.
Right.
It just doesn't. Nope, doesn't happen. They all have skid marks. Every damn one of them have skid marks. They do. That goes for the Princess Charmings too. They have skid marks in their britches, the same as what the Prince Charmings do.
Yeah, they all need
And that brings us down to where we really are. See, because when you're in a relationship, you take the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you put it all together, and you enjoy all of it. All of it, and you have to enjoy all of it. You have to enjoy the good things that happen. You have to enjoy the bad things that happen. Everything. Okay. So the thing is that, for instance, I know that Moshe sometimes gets fairly. Well, could we say that he's insistent on his rights to as an individual? Mm-hmm. Okay, particularly with neighbors, for instance. And you have to enjoy that. He does that really well, doesn't he? He's an expert at it. You ain't never seen nobody do that with neighbors before. Not like he does. So why are you chagrined when he does it? See, you got a fantasy in there, do you? About what should be?
Absolutely. That was what has caused me difficulty, is that I had that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, you can't. The thing is that if you're going to have, you can't. If you're going to try to make one fantasy real, then you got to make them all real. You can't divide yourself up like that. Okay. So if you want him to enjoy your fantasies, then you got to enjoy his too. See, fantasy by itself just is not a good thing, right? You got to deal with the reality of what's actually there. Having the fantasy in your mind is fun because that kind of gives you a roadmap of what you think you want to do and where you want to go. But the fantasy itself can't ever exist in reality, because when it moves from fantasy into reality, it's no longer fantasy.
Well, yeah,
and that's what has to be enjoyed, the reality of it all.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the most dangerous things about when I get lost in fantasy is something that goes like, if only X, and if only X changed or was different, and I think that those
Whoa. Didn't we talk about dichotomies already?
Yeah.
So you want him to be different than what it actually is?
No,
it is, and I want it to be. That's a dichotomy, isn't it? I want it to be the opposite of what it actually is.
Well, okay, I was thinking about it as a fantasy, but either way, it is also a dichotomy. Yeah. All right.
Yes, but then we could probably look at almost any fantasy from that perspective, right? That it's really quite dichotometric.
Interesting.
I don't want to deal with reality.
Yeah.
I want to deal with the fantasy. Okay, what else you got over there, kid?
All right. Okay. Well, I think we're coming up actually on a couple of quotes. And let me.
Okay.
I think I can. Well, actually, I can read them. I think rather than pull it up, we'll just kind of keep that. You go. So the first quote that you cover is from Goethe, and it's, "He whose vision cannot cover history's thousand." Let me say that again. "He whose vision cannot cover history's thousands of years must in outer darkness hover, live within the day's frontier."
Yeah, isn't that a wonderful thought? In other words, look, they some of those clay tablets that they found that date back to summer. Some of those clay tablets for divorce decrees and divorce agreements. Just exactly the same as what we have now today.
A little bit of history about this, okay? Yeah, about
yes,
couples trying to figure out where they're at. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about this one for a second. King Solomon wrote in Song of Solomon about his girlfriend that she had boobs that were like bunches of grapes. We don't use that particular analogy, but we certainly do get the picture, don't we?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
King David, his daddy, the apple didn't fall far from the tree apparently. He lusted after Bathsheba because he saw her taking a bath from doing his peeping Tom thing from the palace window. Lot's daughters, they got horny, and so they slept with their old man. I mean, that's going back in history for 4,000 or 5,000 years, I guess, huh? So what's different? How are we more advanced? How are we different in any way, shape, or form? We're not.
Not so much.
So the thing is that if you can't stop and look at the history of what it is that you're doing, then you're going to be in darkness, because history is what shines a light on where you are. even if it's the history within your own family.
Right. Otherwise, you're looking at that day. You're trapped in that day, saying, "This is all there is," without seeing that.
That's all there is. That's right. And you're singing that song. Is that all there is, my friend? Yeah. Oh my God! You know, what a sad, awful, terrible. Don't sing that. You know, you gotta chant that somewhere in hell somewhere. It's just awful. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that you've got to look at history and find out really what has gone on before us. We're not inventing the wheel. The wheel was invented a long time ago, and it's like we don't need to reinvent it. You know, all of these things that we're talking about are all things that are common. They've been common in history for as long as there's been people to have history, I guess. So
why did you make this the very first quote of the whole class?
Because without the history of understanding what's gone on before, there's not any understanding. And we have to understand that we're not talking about anything that applies to you. You're not special. It isn't a matter of a special idea. I don't care who the you is I'm talking to. This has all been done before. You're not nearly as individualistically creatively. Read it.
Or at least creative.
Yeah, you're not that special. You're a repeat. Almost everybody that's lived has had that same set of experiences. They perceived them differently, but they've had the same experiences. They were good results and bad results because of the perceptions, perhaps, but the experiences are pretty much the same. I mean, Roman women screwed around on their old man and had affairs the same as what the housewives of New York did. Whatever.
Okay, so within the whole structure of the class or people's discussions, and it's like we can see what we're talking. We don't have to get into me and us as unique. We can say, look, this can be seen within this broader context.
Because there's not any me and us that doesn't include the broader ideas.
Right, sure. I mean, because I learn from my parents. They learn from their parents. We're all part of a community. You know, there's.
It isn't even that. We're human beings, and human beings have been. And I'll guarantee you that same crap happened back in the caveman days. It's all the same stuff, because it's the same set of. Okay, look at your smartphone. Your smartphone is pretty much the same as everybody else's smartphone, whether it's an Apple smartphone or a IBM smartphone or a LG smartphone or a Motorola smartphone. All of them got all the same characteristics. They got a file, they got an edit, they got etc. Right? You can copy, you can paste, you can cut, you can send. You got messages, all that stuff, right? The experience with a smartphone is pretty much the same for everybody, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in terms of what they're
trying to do.
There's
variations on the theme to be. Yeah. There are variations on the theme without a doubt, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are. Well, you know, I have this app. You don't have this app. Well, I'll share it with you. So now you have it. Now we both are having the same experience. Well, okay, that's cool. Well, that's exactly the same thing that's happened with the human biocomputer for all these many years as well. There's only so many variations on the theme. There's an operating system that we learned early on in life. There's a set of emotions that we call the meta programs, the things that move us around, make us do things. There are the apps that we have we call feelings. and there's the detailed carryings out of the protocols that the apps require. What shows up on the screen. And there's not a whole heck of a lot of difference in that particular set of how it goes together and it gets expressed. What's different is whether or not we can acknowledge that that's there for everybody, or whether it's just mine. It's what I want.
Okay, so the
Well, you ask why I put it in there. That's the reason.
well, I did, and so now I have to think about it for a moment. Yeah, okay, so it's not just the historical context, the fact that human beings and what we're made of, how our brains work,
Right.
but that's been the same, for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That hasn't really changed.
So that argument that you've had for a few years, the one that says that I'm a special individual and you don't really know who I am.
Yeah,
It's
it was
kind of
of
bogus.
ignoring this point, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah. Kind of a bogus idea, yeah. You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
What else you got, kid?
All right. The next quote is by George Santayana, and it's, "Interest in the changing seasons is a much happier state of mind than being hopelessly in love with spring."
Isn't that a great quote?
Oh, bluebird of happiness, come to me. I want to feel the warmth of spring and sun on my soul.
All year round.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't really make any sense, does it?
No,
See,
not
you
what
got
life
to
is.
have that interest. You have to have that interest in changing seasons. Oh, look, it's winter is just a week away. Are you noticing when the change? Do you notice when the sun stops going south and begins to come north again? Do you notice in the summertime when the sun stops going north and begins to go south again, and all the plants say, "Oh, we're done now. You can harvest in just a little. Let's finish maturing." See, all that stuff happens every year, and we don't pay attention to it. We think that it's another day on the calendar, or on our Apple Watch or something. And so, if you have that attitude, and you're thinking, well, I want to be in love, and I want everything to be warm and fuzzy and wonderful, and I want him to bring me flowers, and I want to dress up in high heels and a really tight skirt that shows off my behind there, and I want to do all that because that's love. You got to check out those skid marks again. I'm telling you, those yellow stains that didn't come from. Actually, they're real. Mm-hmm. They're authentic, actually. Yeah. That's part of that changing season thing. So you can't be hopelessly in love with spring only. You got to deal with the entire package. And so that's kind of what you were talking about before, the dichotomies too, isn't it?
Yes. The if only is, yeah, that was
okay. Making this point with a group of people is a challenge. And you have to set it up with these other statements that go before it. You have to know that you're getting to this place where you're going to talk to them about this thing.
Because if they've got the dichotomies or the blame, they can never get to even thinking about these changing seasons in a kind of more neutral, landscapey way.
What'll happen is they'll say, "Oh, what a lovely thought." I still love spring best.
Right, because this takes away the whole thing. But I like this, but I don't like that. Well, that's called fall. That's called weather.
That's called winter. Yeah, that's called putting chains on the tires. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's called letting the car warm up before we go get in it in the morning. Okay, that's what that's called. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I can see that both of these quotes set up for what is yet to come. It gives you something to reference back. Oh, is this a changing season? Are you still in love with spring? You know, as things come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. See, when you're presenting ideas, you have to build the idea with foundations, right? I mean, that's just the nature of building an idea. And so these are ideas that we think we understand. But you have to, if you're gonna present this material, you have to assume that those are ideas that are really not understood. That not because the people are dumb or anything, it's because they use it all the time, and they just haven't ever had the opportunity or the reason to stop and consider it. That's all. So we have to be careful with them and make sure that we give them the data for them to decide really what they want to do, not to tell them what to do, but rather to say, okay, is this really where you are here? Well, okay, you like that? You got the license, so you can do with it what you want. I don't care.
And what I like about these things is like when you're in that moment where you're kind of, you think you're focused on a very small thing, it gives you a way to open up and look at it a little differently. You know, that it's not just X or Y. It's a different season. It's something that's been around in history. It's something that everybody in mind. All that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of finishes up the first session that you normally do in this class, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the programming aspect. We'll kind of build that on a little more, and then come back for a couple more quotes.
Okay, cool. So are that wrapping it up for us for today then?
I think that's a good place to do that.
Okay, cool. Alrighty.
Okay.
Did you have a good time? Did you have a good time?
Well, you know, it got me to look at a few things that were I you know, those dichotomies were still in my thinking, and that's good for me to be aware of. So, you know, yeah, it took me back for a minute, but they're there. So
okay, let me hold on a second though. Okay, look. Okay. This isn't about you. See, you're not thinking about these things for you. You're thinking about these things for the person that you're going to present this material to. You want to think about it from their perspective, not from yours.
Okay.
See, I have to stop and I have to consider how you think about this. I got to go by the clues that you give me to say, okay, this is what you're saying, right?
Well, exactly what you did. You listened to what I said during the session. You said, "Wait a minute, right there." Then you knew where I hadn't fully digested a point fully. To put it delicately.
Well, see that. Okay, because otherwise I would be derelict in my duties to present the information for you so that you may understand it, which means that it has to be operative in me. Okay.
Right.
Because if it isn't operative in me, I can't. That's right. So that's the thing about all this material. It's like if you're going to present it to other people, it's got to be operative in you. Because in real time, you're going to have to address these issues with people right in front of God and everybody, because you want to make sure that they understand it. You don't want to throw them out with the baby out with the bathwater. You want to say, okay, look, here, this is water. You go and do this. Okay, now see, it's cleaning up your hands. I'm going to back up them a little bit. There you go. Now, water on the face. And, ooh, see, isn't that fun? You got to do all those things, right? Because that's the reason why they're sitting there in your class or in your session is because they want to understand this thing. And the only way they're going to understand it is if you understand it. You're what they got at that moment. What they're doing with each other isn't working so well. So you're what they've got. So it has to be operative in you. So yeah, I'm hard on you about it. Mm-hmm, I am.
Well, I mean,
that's
kind of what I'm here
this?
for. I mean, as somebody
That's
who
right.
wants to present this is just like, okay, if it's not observable, let me deal with that right now. So I'm not
Please,
bringing
ma'am.
it to.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well,
All right.
We'll see you for the next one. And if those of you who are following the series, be sure to take a look and subscribe and see what next is up for the business of forging agreement. So next time, John, see you around.
You need to hit that like button too, right? Isn't that?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
it-
Yeah,
it-
it's like that. Yeah. We love that. We like to know what you think, and comments are great too on the YouTube comments. So
All right.
thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you for the next session.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. The Dyad Workshop on-demand videos will be available for purchase in our store soon. Follow us on Facebook at Forging Agreement for workshop release date announcements. Links in the description below. Before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to stay up to date for new videos.